The week of reckoning is upon us.
Let me into my zone. Let me into my zone. Please don't let me into my zone. 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 Please don't let me.
Welcome back to Krown's Crypto Cave. Waking up for a little bit of a later Monday morning over here from very clean and nice, pristine Helsinki, Finland. I'm feeling like absolute shit today to start off my Monday morning. I spent all night up in the not so fun times of the night, and I'm pretty sure that my girlfriend has coronavirus. So probably a good candidate for what's going on right now. I'm going to be taking it easy today. I don't know if I'll be doing Twitch later, and this is probably going to be a shorter video, and I hope to mean that actually. Anyways, I'm not really showing any other symptoms other than just feeling like absolute dog shit. But let's actually get into the actual analysis right here, because the show must go on. There are more important things in the world, and Jesus Christ, man, my day wouldn't feel complete without doing at least a little bit of cryptocurrency analysis. And this week, I think, is going to be the big week for a nice move outside of the medium and potentially even long-term range as well, as we kind of wrap up the end portion of April. And also, before we get into the actual price analysis, what else do I want to say? Yes, our developer has recovered from coronavirus. He's all good, and now we should get the next update on the app probably within this week, and we will be getting the open interest chart, which could not come at a better time, because my English is not so good right now. But what I'm saying right now is that the open interest, as we've been tracking it for the last, realistically, like the last month and a half, I really want to see that chart to kind of compare, historically speaking, and kind of come up and verify or validate ideas, or maybe devalidate ideas as well, of which right now, still have to go off of memory right here, and we do still see that we're kind of caught within that range between 600 million and 700 million. So that tells us that we really haven't seen the big break yet. I think that's further verified by looking at price action and volatility, as well as formations too. So everything kind of agreeing with each other right now. But what I'm still looking for in the open interest to kind of verify that next move that's going to really dictate the next sort of couple months of Bitcoin price action. Do we shoot up above 700 million plus taking back 7,300 on Bitcoin price action? Well, that would look pretty damn good for some upside, and vice versa for the downside. We'll talk about those levels as well. Anyways, I'm getting way ahead of myself right now, and I think it's time for me to getting the actual price analysis. So let's do it running over here, man. I feel slow as fuck right now. I do apologize about this. But overall, Bitcoin closing the daily, closing the weekly in a little bit of a precarious place here. It doesn't really give us all that much. It doesn't really mark off any biases as far as the medium or longer term timeframes go. Shorter term timeframes, though, are going to start to formulate themselves. But more importantly, going on to the weekly, we do see that the weekly did close below all major moving averages here. Well, all major moving averages that are the 10 simple, 21 and 55, all the lower periods essentially. And that does add up for another look next week, coming into next week's closure, depending upon how we're going to do this. Now, Bear's going to be looking at this as some sort of like a hangman dildo. I don't necessarily think that that's appropriate. I think they have a better case maybe on CMEs, which I do like that chart better overall. But you really want to see it at the top of the trend, and we don't really see that right now. By the same token, Bull's going to be looking at this as continuation, and I would actually be agreeing with that if this next weekly dildo closes above 71.50. And with this last weekly closure that we saw on yesterday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, I do believe that momentum oscillators, especially from this time frame's perspective, are going to be on the side of the bulls here. So looking at weekly Stokes, we did cross the upside, also kind of following this trend line going all the way back from well, I guess I already have it in there, not really following it, to be fair, but rejecting the bearish control zone more importantly, and confirming that cross the upside, which will be followed through. Again, looking at the reverse Stoke indicator cross, as long as Bitcoin price action remains above 5650-ish region, which is the 200 simple moving average. So Bitcoin has a big range here, so to speak, but as long as we're above essentially the 200 simple, there is going to be another threat of an upside move for the greater time frames is what I want to show. And as we've been speaking about, that level that I'd be looking at is nestled in that upper 7,000, low $8,000 region, pretty much right alongside the 200 simple and 200 exponential moving average on the daily right now, actually, as they kind of mosey on their way down. And if we put on our drawing tools right here, it's the same order block that we looked at from the early March breakdown, and more importantly, the same liquid zone that led up to the breakout from this accumulation zone in late 2019. So I really like that as a historical area. We also would see likely a nice Fibonacci coming in somewhere around that region as well, assuming that we actually do this properly, which we do see, yeah, coming in right around about 8,000 at that 618 on a bearish retracement. On a bullish retracement, I don't believe that that's what we're looking at, but we would be at the 0.5 right now, I believe, without even doing it. But feel free to comment on that, because I'm just doing a little bit of mental math right there. We're kind of in the middle of the range, I suppose. Anyways, other than that, let me take this back on off. Like I said, this is going to be a little bit of a shorter video today. I'm going to go down to the lower term timeframes now and talk a little bit more about what I'm looking for here, which is more or less the same. It's more or less the same that we were looking at for the past few days. The ranges, even from the short-term timeframes, we haven't even broke the short-term timeframe range. Now, we did get that test down to about 7,000 bucks that I was looking for, or did we get it? No, we got it down to 70-50ish region. Close enough is close enough for me. But realistically, no breakages were had below the blue box of peace down here and the blue box of destiny up here. This one obviously a lot more important, as that is what's going to make me bullish for some medium-term action up to that, $7,900 level, we'll call it. But until that gets broken, I do believe that this is actually starting to shape up a little bit more constructively in the short term. So it is looking a little bit better here, but here's a competing narrative, and here's what I actually put more weight on. And my overall opinion is that this probably does come back down, to be honest with you. But looking at the 12-hour, we do see that momentum oscillators are pretty much spent within this region. Now, technically speaking, it is still to the upside. However, we are meeting this long-term trend line coming in all the way back from, early February, by the way, which has gotten some pretty nice moves to the downside, starting with this first one from about 10,500. You might have heard of it. You might remember it right over here, connected with this high right here at about 9,100 before this next move down. And then more recently on this high right here at about 6,750 before a $1,000 move to the downside. And then again, right over here at 7,400 before this $1,000 move to the downside, or almost around there. And then once again, we are hitting it right now. So to me, if we do confirm a Stoke cross to the downside on the 12-hour, that kind of supersedes everything else that I've been looking at, to be honest with you. And more importantly, while that has been allowed to rise to the top side of the range, while Bitcoin price action has not broken anything even from the medium time frame perspective, and only tested it and rejected it multiple times now in the low term time frames, like our 4-hour and under, to me that is shaping up to be more distributive like, and I would actually be looking for this to probably come on down. Granted, one major thing, I need to see that confirmed cross to the downside, plus breaking at the very least a short-term level. So the short-term level, as we just looked at, or I guess we looked at it, but I didn't really speak about it, is the 7,100 level right here. However, I'd really like to see a break below 6950, because that is actually below the 200 exponential average now on the 4-hour, which is governing that golden cross as it stands. So as long as we're above there, it will still be, a major consideration. However, the second that we actually break back down below it is the second that this starts to look a lot more trappy once again. And looking at the 12-hour and looking at the reverse Stoke indicator cross, I want to see if it lines up with one of those levels. And what do you fucking know? It lines up pretty much right at that 7,100-ish level. So I really like that area for kind of generating some actual downside here. At the very least, to test down at 6950, but that's not helpful. That's only a $100 move. Realistically, I'd be looking for a move all the way back down to about 6750 down here and test the next medium side range to the downside, and that's again in this pocket between about 6700 and 6750. So I really like that area, and that's where the medium term timeframes once again really take on a more bearish meaning, and where I can also start to target moves back down below 6,000, which does start to fit into the weekly's narrative of kind of playing out a range between where we are right now in the low 7,000s and the in the middle of the 5,000s. So I do like that from a greater perspective. I don't think it's really called for me. No, I don't think it's really appropriate for me to be talking about like major upside targets and major downside targets right now. I want to focus on the short-term price action because, well, my attention span is rather short right now as well, as is my stature, unfortunately. Fucking goddamn it, cursed with 175, I think, centimeters, or I don't even know. Anyways, it's all good. Got shoes for that, man. Anyways, Jesus Christ. Can't help myself even when I feel like shit, man. Looking at our low term time frames, we do see 4-hour Stokes technically down right now, but we are going to be meeting this trend line right alongside the neutral zone. But again, let's go check out what that reverse Stoke indicator says, and let's see if it matches up with that 7,100-ish level. Let's see, maybe there's something in here. And actually, what do you know? We will remain to the downside as long as we're below 71.85. So pressure is on to the downside from a short-term perspective, technically as long as we remain below the median of the short-term range between about 7,100 and 7,300 right here. But I wouldn't really be looking for the next move correlating with some actual potential downside until we actually break 7,100, preferably on a 4-hour closure. 12-hour would be even better, and I would actually target a move immediately down to 69.50 or 6,900, probably a small bounce here, and then continuation down to the low side of the range, 67.50, which is also going to be the 4-hour 200 simple as well. So that would make a nice target for that move, at least in the short and medium term. And that's where the medium term, like I just said, can change, because we do see the precipice of some pretty important formations going on right there. Let me pull up my Finex chart. Let me get rid of this as it's kind of in the way right now. And let's put on a daily and we can chart it out just like we had yesterday. We still do have this as a rising channel, or if you want to call it a rising wedge, whatever the fuck you want to call it, whether you're using wicks or whether you're using bodies, operates about the same. And what do we see? If we do break below the bottom side support of it, which is where it's actually crawled up quite a bit here, depending upon how steep of a slope you give this. I think a little bit more of a generic slope, or sorry, a gentlest slope would be better here, just to err on the side of caution. Would suggest support right around about 67.50ish region, correlating exactly where. Our blue box here is kind of holding this one up, and also kind of our last potential, or well, what seems to be a higher low right now on the daily. So not only would we actually be breaking structure there, we'd also see momentum oscillators turn down at the same time, and on top of that, momentum oscillators, by the way, on higher term timeframes that actually do matter, and also trend would quite literally be once again to the downside. This would be confirmed as a local high. We have our low right here. If we break below that, well, now you got a lower low and a lower high. Sounds like a goddamn downtrend to me. So again, we are on the precipice of a big move. I do think this week actually, and this is going to be further enhanced by the historical volatility percentile read, not necessarily on the daily, as you can see that this one still has some room to go down. We're just kind of hitting into the 30 marker right now, which is not that crazy, but certainly on the 12-hour does suggest a big bad move incoming. And this does suggest actually we can actually even time this one a little bit, as we do see an apex on this coming in actually around 15th, 16th of May, which you might be familiar with as the halving date, right? And that would suggest that once we get about 75% full within this region, probably very, 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 very statistically speaking likely to break it, which would happen a little bit later this week. It looks like 25th, 26th of April if I'm looking at this time frame. If I do it on a 4-hour, it would actually suggest like today or tomorrow, but I do trust more in the higher term time frames. And to give you an idea of what this kind of read has produced in the past as far as movement goes, we see this one right around here. This is November 2018. You don't need me to go through the price action one on this one to tell you that was a $6,000 or $3,000 move during that time frame. We even see a lesser aggressive one right here, consolidating for about a month and a half, it looks like, from May 2019 to June 2019. So that's May, or I don't know how the months go, but something like maybe like a month and a half, which is kind of what we're looking at right now. And this was this whole move going from about 7,500 to 14,000. So, both to the upside and the downside. Obviously, one of those moves was a 50% move to the downside. One of those moves was a 50% move to the upside. We're really looking at a big move here. And I think that this is further enhanced by our higher term time frame look on this. As I've been looking at the 2-day total time frame for quite some time now, I do believe that the death cross is still very much relevant. And as long as we are below the 55 exponential moving average on this, which has crawled its way all the way down below 7,600 now, and the 200 exponential moving average around 7,800, also sounds damn familiar. That is interesting to me as well, because historically speaking, whenever we've seen the death cross on the 2-day total time frame, we have seen about a 50% move to the downside or more. Obviously, only coming to the downside, to the upside. Well, same thing right over here too. 2x to the upside, to be fair. But I wouldn't necessarily trust that as like a base metric. Anyways, I do want to go over this once again. Just as we're kind of like on this thread, death cross right over here in 2018, nice descending triangle on the lows, very fucking bearish. When Bitcoin does pop up and test the 55 and even the 200 in the other segment, as you probably already know, and then sets up once we get shoved back down below the yellow 21 right here for about a 50% move to the downside, which sounds familiar. We're looking at that historic volatility percentile read for what was essentially the same area actually. Going back on over here, the only other time that we've actually had one except for right now, which does make 3, which maybe we are looking at a trend right now. We do see the same sort of thing. Bitcoin price action very far away from the cross, pops up, tests all the way up to the 200, not even the 55, but the 200 on a wick basis. Again, that would be that 7,800, 7,900 region if it does happen. And then once it gets shoved back down below the yellow 21, big massive move down about 53.75%. So do we have, do I want to get super aggressive in an area like this? No, actually, because I still think that it's possible that Bitcoin could pop up to 78 or 7,900. My point is that doesn't really change anything for me until we start to like close above there on a higher term time frame like this month. Then I would switch bullish. But there's a bullish trade to be had there, of course, as well. Above 7,300, as we looked at, that's what, like a $600 trade, $700 trade at a $7,000 price point. I mean, that's about a 10% move. It's pretty fucking nice if you ask me. Anyways, more importantly, as we looked at the last few initiations of this, it's not until the 2-day starts closing below the 21 exponential moving average, and especially in even the 10 simple by that extension, these two guys right here, until that becomes like a very pressure on type thing. And as of last night, we actually got our first, I think, open and close above it. Let's actually confirm this. So we opened 70.20, so yeah, $2 above, just barely, but we did. And then we closed 71.26, so obviously closing above it. We got our first open and close above it. So if Bitcoin is going to have that move to the upside, I do think that it happens like sooner rather than later, like this week. Again, I don't really trust timing all that well, but looking at also at the the volume signature right here, you can see that we are putting in an apex around early May, which would suggest a breakout point pretty much where we are right now. So very, 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 very likely. I do think in this next week of price action, probably even sooner rather than later. If I'm going off of something like this, if I'm going off of volatility, I think maybe a little bit later, on this week. But the kind of look on it is around the same. I do think that we're going to be getting a big bad move, and based off of moving averages, based off of momentum, I do think that probably comes to the downside. But I'm not opposed to a move to the upside first, about 7,800, 7,900, fulfill all the destinies of those blue boxes above, and then get everyone extremely bullish because halving, right? The question to myself is right now is that do we actually get that move to the upside, or do we move down first? And realistically, looking at our low term timeframes and our medium time frame oscillators, actually the downside move would look more appropriate right now. Also, the 2-day Stokes, I think, are going to confirm across the downside. Yes, indeed, they have, and they will remain crossed to the downside as long as we remain below 72.50 on a 2-day total closing basis, which we just closed one last night, so that's obviously not closing today. So, I do think that is in the cards. It does provide the scenario where we actually do come down like sooner rather than later, rather than having that move to the upside. But I'd still just be going level by level here at the end of the day because that's what's been keeping this baby safe, more or less. And I think it also is worth mentioning that while Bitcoin spot price action, spot USD did get the golden cross, I don't believe CMEs have. Yeah, they're pretty damn far away from it. The green and the purple is what I'm referring to, and we did just fill the gap multiple times. No, I'm just kidding. A little bit of a meme there. And Bitcoin yen is actually just confirming it right now. So interesting, actually, very, very interesting. So we see a bifurcated market between all the different markets here. I don't know what to make of that, and I think that's my signal to myself to kind of hold back on any trade right now and wait for one of the major levels to get hit, which then drives the next sort of buys. Because I again, like I said, it wouldn't really do all that much to get another $600, $700 move to the upside, and to put perspective into it. Looking at it from a monthly basis, that would actually only even get us back up to, the 10 simple on the monthly. Right now, we're being held below the 21 on a monthly basis. We do see potentially a downtrend forming on the monthly. In fact, I believe it is a downtrend because we have a high, low, lower high, and this is obviously going to be a lower low right here, unless if we get a complete mind fuck, which could happen. But overall, I would feel quite confident saying that while Bitcoin could test above 7,300 or 7,350 this month, April, I actually feel quite strongly that I do not think that Bitcoin will be closing above 7,300 this month of April. But if the closer that we close to 300 by the end of this month, which is in like 10 days, I think. Let's see how long is this month. 10 days till the 30th. The more and more it does build up a case that Bitcoin could actually bottom within this region. I mean, this wick does look like capitulation, rather similar to what we saw back down over here. That would look good, especially, coming off the reads that we see on the fear and greed index showing at 15 right now. That is a little bit more of a point in the bull's favor, as people are very fearful right now, apparently, according to that indicator. I don't know how accurate it is, but it has gotten things well in the past, I think. But again, we probably need a chart for that one too. And Bitcoin price action has doubled off the lows. So, realistically, you would expect it to go up into the greedy zone if we were if we were going to be oscillating in this zone right here. So to me, it's a little bit of a waiting game for the macro area. I'm not bullish on basically any asset long term, as long as it's below the yellow 21 exponential moving average on the monthly. That's what I use in traditional markets when I was that's what I use in traditional. I can't even fucking finish my own sentences right now. This is kind of silly. I hope that it's coming out in some way okay. But the 21 is what I use in traditional markets to judge if a stock was like long term bullish or bearish. And as of right now, we are operating below it. It actually has been working pretty damn well in Bitcoin's history, even though I'd expect it to work a lot better if Bitcoin had, like 15 years of history at the very least instead of 10 years, as the more time that it has, the better. But back on over in 2014, 2015, kind of similar read right here, actually breaks below it just initially, comes back up, tests it, even tests around the 10 simple, which again would be in that low $8,000 number. Interesting, right? That those areas do seem to line up with each other. But as long as we're below the 21, it is pressure down, and I am very skeptical of any long-term bottoming as long as that condition is not met. So I'm not saying that it can't happen. I'm just saying that I need to see that set up for myself. And this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, but I'm just kind of sharing my own perspective on this market. By the same token, is there something to look at right on over here? I mean, you could look. We could take this a step further and say that, hey, this is a rising channel right here, as we kind of looked at on our Phoenix chart, and we do see something similar on the last couple examples where we had that 2-day double death cross, right, where we have a redistribution pattern in 2018 in the ascending triangle, and then back in 2014, 2015, if we actually can get the information down around there. I don't know if it has it on Phoenix. Yeah, it actually does. There's an obvious rising channel or ascending broadening wedge in this area right here, and same sort of thing. gets that last spike up, gets everyone extremely bullish, I'm sure, but realistically, it's just kind of testing the last major breakdown area, of which, this would be your last major breakdown area, right? This kind of like a massive descending triangle in its own right, which would kind of be the same thing right on over here too, right? This major massive breakdown right around that, low $8,000 number, upper $7,000 number. So I don't really have a strong opinion of whether we actually tap that area first or not, but I do have a strong opinion that as long as we're kind of operating below those levels on the macro level, I have to be defensive as a trader. As a long-term investor, different game. That's not what we're talking about. This channel is focused on traders. So I'm always coming at it from my my view of reality. Looking at daily Stokes, we actually do see them up right now. They are rejecting the neutral zone and going to test back into the bullish neutral zone. I'm curious what it would take to actually get them to cross to the downside from here. And we'd actually have to close below 6,700. So beautiful. Once again, we see all of these sort of tools confirming or at least my bias areas, maybe agree with it, maybe don't. But overall, if Bitcoin does head back down below 6,750, 6,700, we're going to see momentum oscillators turn back down around there on 12-hour daily, obviously the 12-hour, but more importantly, the daily. We're going to actually make a downtrend on the daily as well, confirming this as a lower high and then getting a lower low in that region, and also resolving the rising channel as also resolving the rising channel here as broken to the downside as well, which does actually have a measure move all the way down to where about 5,500-ish region, which, if you remember, is the weekly range actually coming in from the 200 simple and the 10 simple that we're looking at right here, which is a classic range. Anyways, my point is that alongside having the 2-day double death cross, blah blah blah, you get where I'm going with this. So my point is that I don't want to get too ahead of myself right now. If you're looking for more long-term analysis, check out yesterday's video that I uploaded in the long-term analysis playlist, as that's going to be more focused on that. It's kind of the purpose of it. Right now, I'm just kind of focusing on the shorter and medium-term time frames, but essentially that's what I'm looking at right now. And like I said, I still do think that there is a possibility that we could actually have that move to the upside. And if it does happen, it probably happens early this week. But for right now, pressure does seem to be mounting onto the downside sooner rather than later, at least for the short terms, which again do not really change for me until at the very very least, we get a 2-hour or 4-hour little closure below 7100-ish region. Now let's go look at probabilities with regards to historical volatility percentile and see if this enhances any of the biases or not. As I've been saying, the longer that Bitcoin kind of stalls here without breaking above 7300 or 7350, whatever you want to call it, it's basically the same area as far as I'm concerned. It's like fucking blimp on the map when you're looking at it daily, by the way. Anyways, we do see that the historical volatility percentile rings, the expected moves rings are starting to squeeze down, but this is on current time frame. Let's actually look at future right now and see what this shows. Flattening out. Yesterday it was a little bit to the upside. Now flattening out a little bit. Anyways, my point with that is that slowly but surely we've seen the odds start to lessen in the favor of the bulls and increase in the favor of the bears the longer that Bitcoin hangs around here without actually breaking out to the upside. So going over here to our probability panel, I'd still say 7350. The upside is that major area, and even we can now even move the $7,000 area up to 7100. This is obviously for very low time frames, but that would initiate that next move down to at the very least 6900-ish region, 6950. Personally speaking, I do think that Bitcoin would make the next like $400 or $200 move for a $400 move overall to about 6700, which is where the greater picture does start to change as like an actionable downside trade for myself once again. And I prefer to do this with options, by the way. But yeah, looking at it right now, look at this. Okay, our above target probability is 27%. That when I believe yesterday that probability was somewhere in like the 30s or 40s. In the below target probability, this is for 7100. Admittedly, this is like obviously a lot easier. It's not not a big deal, but does have the domino of effects as I've been showing, or likely at least 42.5% to the downside. Now, if I change that to 6950, which is the 200 exponential average on the 4-hour golden cross, kind of holding that back, that probability has also risen up a little bit as well and is more in line with our above target probability, running at about 24.5%. But remember, it's really the 6700 6750 area that really confirms the next move to the downside. In my opinion, closing below there on a higher term time frame would be absolutely lovely for driving my bias boner. And right now we do see about an 8.5% chance of that happening. So it's not like it's impossible, but it's definitely is it going to happen today? No, we probably have like another day or two. Of fucking around in that range before, so it's gonna be likely another short-term time frame range today between basically 6950 and 7300. I do think that this is an actionable area right here, and if we do break it, we will very likely test this area and overall probably bounce on the first pass, but overall come all the way back down to 6700. That would set Bitcoin up for like the big bad area longer term. By the same token, to the upside, 7350 to the upside, on a 4-hour total closure, 7300 on like a 12-hour or a daily, and then I'd be targeting to move all the way up here towards that upper 7,000, low $8,000 area, correlated with our historical area right here, also the Fibonacci that we looked at. And if you want to look at this long-term descending trend line, which I don't really trust them all that much, more importantly, it does align with the horizontal sweat, so I do like it. Fair enough. All kind of coming around this region as well, so I do like those things. And then our underlying market dynamics are kind of suggesting that this move happens probably this week. The lower time frames say sooner rather than later. The higher term time frames say probably later this week. I don't really have an opinion on that, but I do want to check out traditional markets to see how they're operating right now. We do see NAS futures having a little bit of a down right now, down 1/3%. And then we'll go around. Oh, actually, hold on. Let's go check out Japan really quick. Japan down a little bit over 1% right now. Not a huge deal, but it is looking a little bit more toppy to me in comparison. And this is all coming along the side of, yeah, I mean, it looks like one massive rising wedge to me, really. Something like this kind of looks like a loss of momentum. So I do think that I do hold on to what I've been saying over the last few days, that I do think that this week is probably going to, at the very least, try some downside to open up the week. Now's futures should be, look a lot more toppy to me. If we take out Friday's low, I would be looking for this to extend all the way back down to the 10 simple, somewhere right around about 8450, 8500, also in line with our last kind of spike lows right here. Not even spike lows, but just wick lows right there. And also just coming off a rejection off this historical level right here. I mean, this is fucking perfect, really. Sometimes the market will be nice to you, and I think that this is perhaps one of those times, and it's a very easy trade, at least from my perspective, because you have a very natural stop at the high of Friday at about 89.50. So we did hit our target to the upside, and I do think I still hold on to what I've been saying. I think that this one's coming down now. Am I going to call like a full-on reversal to new all-time lows? I don't know about that. I don't know about that at all, but I do think that why is everyone saying that the 618 has been tested here? It's not, at least not on NAS futures, maybe on SPY futures, but we'll check that one out as well. But no major fib has been hit here. Looking at the weekly, weekly looks good, but I do think that we're going to come down to like test around 8400, 8450-ish region, something like that. I wouldn't get too bearish on this until it actually breaks below about 8250-ish region. But let's go check out SPY futures now and see if that agrees. And SPY futures also look a little bit toppy to me as well. I'd like to see Friday's low taken out in order to really confirm some actual downside here, alongside a break of this rising wedge formation, which would initiate a measure move all the way down to about 2550-ish region, which is kind of out of the way. Actually, you know what? No. That was wrong. It has not broken just yet. So, presuming that it actually does get a break, it would align better with this horizontal right here, which I do like. Now let's see if a fib lines up with anything on this. As I'm curious what it's showing right now. And there we go. Okay, so it is around the 618. We did kind of almost graze it in the low 290s, getting up to about 28.85 on Friday. It looks like now kind of coming down, and I do believe that this target is directly correlated with the 382 fib right here as well. So, even if, regardless of whether you're bullish or bearish, I do think that this is, a likely pullback area regardless of that fact. I would get like bearish for retesting around 235 if 2650 is broken to the downside, and I would getting bullish to the upside is a little bit more difficult here. If it does want to have another stab back up to like 2950 or even 3000, that's fine. I don't think that really even breaks the rising wedge that you're looking at right here. But again, looking at historical volatility percentile, I believe on the lower term timeframes, we should see the etchings of a move in progress sooner rather than later. Let me go check out the 4 hour. The 4 hour is showing it right here. Yeah, it's starting to expand from a very low positioning, which typically is going to be your bigger moves. For reference, we see it very, very low in this kind of way right here in early April before this massive move to the upside. We see it very low. I mean, we see it trending low for a long time here, basically at the top essentially. Sorry, let me actually extrapolate this out because it probably doesn't look like all that much. Yeah, there you go. From early February to middle February, so about 2 weeks between this portion right here and the actual top at 3400-ish region. So I do like that. We are setting up for a relatively big move here. The question to me is, or the question that I'd be having is, do we get another stab at like 2930 first, or do we top out sooner rather than later and then play out a little bit of downside? So SPY futures look like they do want to head up there. NAS futures look more toppy than not. So do we maybe have a bifurcated market right now? Yeah, probably yes. Tech's kind of let it to the upside. Now I think the laggards are kind of catching up, and that's a good sign that we're probably losing momentum on this one overall for at least a short and medium term. And does SPY get another spike up here? I think it's definitely possible, but overall, I think that this one's going to be coming back down and testing around that region, in the months to come, as well as NAS probably sooner rather than later. And as we just looked at Japan kind of opening up the world markets to the downside today, not super concerning here though, to be fair, not super concerning as it is. Let's go check out gold. Gold had a very abysmal close. I didn't even talk about this over the weekend, but a massive shooting star dildo on the highs thus far. Did not hit my $1,800 target, but did get up to about $1,750, which is pretty damn good. Close enough is close enough as far as I'm concerned. Can this one afford some downside? Yes, absolutely. I mean, this one come all the way back down to 1590 and not do anything of too much note for the macro, but for the shorter terms, really don't want to see, kind of like the line in the sand for this one is about 1550 here, as do want to see this uptrend continue if this one is going to get more love longer term. So for right now, it does look like probably, short-term, medium-term toppy. Long-term, I think is still in question, depending upon how the monthly closes. If the monthly closes anywhere above, especially 1700, obviously still bullish for the long term. If it closes below 1650, that's where it becomes a little bit questionable. And then obviously bearish below about 1600, I'd say. But for right now, short term, medium term, I do think that we're going to play out some downside, probably testing back down around about 1650-ish region, also in between there and in 1700. And I'd really be waiting for the monthly close to get the long term read on this one. Other than that, do we want to check out anything else? I think that probably does it. This video is already 33 minutes long. 33 minutes maybe too long for some people. But overall, looking at Bitcoin running over here once again and kind of wrapping this bitch up. whoops, let's go back to this this chart. This is one that we've been following. 73.50, the upside still on a 4-hour total closure. I would actually target, I would be looking for extension all the way up here. Could there be a nice fake out? Yes, along the way. Potentially, especially if you get like a wick up and then close back down below 73, that would be an obvious, you know, an obvious thing. But for right now, looking like it's already kind of finding pressure in the lower portion of this. By the same token, 7100 to the downside for the short term, I do believe would initiate another $200 move, about $300 move to the downside. So that is rather tradable, almost a 5% move right there, pretty damn nice, even for a short term trade. All the way down to about 6,900. I do believe that Bitcoin would bounce in this region once again, but I do believe that would really set Bitcoin up for a more bearish look on this. The bounce probably, you know, who knows how high it gets back up to, maybe 7,100, maybe test area officially once again. But my important point here is that I'd say it's very, very likely to come down and test the bottom side of the range overall at about 6,700, 6,750. That's where the medium-term timeframes could have a nice change in behavior for initiating that next major move to the downside. Probably a little bit below 6,000. We do have a measure move pointed down towards about 5,600, which is in line with the 200 simple on the weekly, a little bit below, but of course, you know, it's a little bit too aggressive to kind of extrapolate that for right now. So I think that's a good place to end this video. I want to take a second to wish you well, wish you the best of the best. I want to say massive thank you for all of the love and support that people have been showing to Elsa. She really appreciates it. She's not feeling the best right now, but she's gonna power through it. She's a strong girl, and hopefully this is all that I have to deal with. So anyways, I'm gonna be signing off now. Take care, and until next time.